Hello and welcome to Article 11, the summary of the law. So Article 11 is from the European Convention on Human Rights, so the ECHR. Now, Article 11 gives you rights, freedom of assembly and freedom of association, and the freedom of association includes joining trade unions. Okay, so those are your rights. Well, Article 11, you must know, is a qualified right. So this means that your rights can be restricted. So first of all, any restriction to your rights by the state, so any state interference must be lawful, necessary and proportionate, and it's got to be for a legitimate aim. So Article 11.2 sets out when your rights can be restricted. So examples that we've got, prevention of disorder and crime, in the interest of national security and public safety, for the protection of health and morals. So those are when the state can interfere, but as I said, it has to be proportionate and necessary. Do remember that states have a margin of appreciation, so that means they can interpret those rights slightly differently. They have discretion. And you can use the case of Turkey to back that up. That's about their police having firearms. States also have a positive obligation to protect your rights, and they mustn't interfere with your rights, which is the negative obligation. So first of all, let's consider a peaceful assembly. Now, the case of Cisse was where people were in a church for 200 days. They were protesting, and the state broke up the protest. And it was held that this was okay for them to do that. There was no breach of Article 11. And I think it was probably because they had been there. There were lots of them and they'd been there for a long time. So I think I would argue that was like public health and morals, the reason that the state interfered, and that was justified. So remember that people can meet, they can march, they can protest. You also have the right to counter-protest, which you can quote the case against Austria. In terms of association with others, well, you are free to join a political party. You cannot stop people joining political parties, and that's the case of Redfern, the bus driver who joined the BNP. The term association isn't actually defined, and that is stated in the case of McFeely. But McFeely was not allowed to associate with other prisoners because, I guess, the national security threat, and that was deemed to be a lawful interference. So in terms of being prescribed by law, well, there has to be a clear legal basis for the interference. Necessary in a democracy, there has to be a pressing social need, and it's got to be proportionate. You can talk about Laporte. This was the bus full of the protesters, and that was deemed to be disproportionate when the police did not let them off the bus. Protection of health and morals, you can quote the case of Lamala. So this was the case against Finland to do with the registration of a drugs association, and they said that that was not allowed. So I think that's a good one because it comes under the margin of appreciation. And then rights and freedoms of others, you can quote the Countryside Alliance case where they were allowed to protest the hunting ban, but they were not allowed to kill animals. So linked to Article 11, we do have some domestic legislation to do with public order offences. So tune in for that video.